Welcome back to Building Better Homes, brought to you by PPC Cement. I'm Fez Lempela. Over the past 6 episodes, we've put 4 teams of emerging builders through some serious challenges to test their building skills. Those challenges finished some 3 weeks ago, and the cement and concrete they've built with have had time to cure properly. Now, it's up to our judges to take a closer look at the work the teams did and decide who did the best job.
While some of the structures appeared acceptable immediately after construction, cementitious materials go through a number of changes when exposed to different weather conditions. And that is why we have returned here a couple of weeks later to evaluate each of the challenges.
So let's take a look in detail at each team's handiwork. On the inside of each house, teams had to plaster a wall and screed a floor, while on the outside, they had to build a braai and lay a concrete walkway.
Every challenge the teams worked on was judged against a tough list of criteria. The judges scored our contestants against the following. Was all PPE worn correctly at all times, and were there any injuries? Was the substrate prepared correctly? Were all materials and equipment inspected and correctly measured out? Was the equipment suitable for the mixing process? Was the correct material selected for the application? And were the recommended proportions followed? Was the equipment and the techniques employed suitable for the application? Was any compaction used? Was the equipment suited to the finishing technique? Was the finishing technique suitable for the application? Was the equipment and surrounding area cleaned afterwards? Were all the materials suitable for protection and curing? Were they applied at the correct time? And were the methods effective? Was the structure finished to an acceptable flatness? Were the edges neatly finished and aligned? Was the structure plumb and straight? Was the planning effective? Was the material and equipment selection optimal? And was any creativity or innovation applied? The last set of criteria was judged after a certain length of time had passed. Here, the judges looked at the texture of the surface, they looked at whether joints were neatly installed and at the correct locations, and lastly, whether any cracking, curling or delamination had occurred.
Okay, Team Orange's braai. Those are never lost. I'm worried about that because if you make a heavy kind of fire with a little bit of heat, that fiber cement might just break.
Not a nice looking braai, is it? It hasn't been finished off very nicely, but quite functional.
Yep.
It has 2 levels. Maybe they could put a steel plate in there.
Look, it's not very neat brickwork. The perps aren't the same size. The dugger beds are not the same thickness.
All right, let's go and have a look at the next one.
So who's this? Team Blue?
Team Blue.
The braai.
From a brickwork point of view, it's actually quite neatly done.
Yeah. I see some cracks already up here. Have a look.
They disadvantaged themselves by putting this thick slab on. They couldn't pull out the formwork, the support work, and they never protected it. Hence the cracking.
Hence the cracking. That's a pity.
But at least it's a work surface.
Exactly.
The braai area is totally impractical.
Yes.
You are half a meter above your fire. I'm not sure how practically you would braai on this.
I fail to understand why they put a slab down at the bottom there, because there was already the base.
Yeah.
But they put another one in, and it is cracked even worse than this one.
Same problem.
This is Grey Team's braai challenge. And we've already looked at this challenge before. We had identified some cracking because of that top course of bricks, which goes right across the butt joint. And we also found that the pigment that they had put on, there was no binder in it.
Yeah.
So even with the exposure to the rain, it's still coming off.
It's still coming off.
That created sort of almost a cement wash bag finish, quite like that.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Gives it a bit of a rustic feel, and they've left some ventilation holes, which I find quite clever.
Now that bag wash has lightened quite a bit.
Yeah.
When we saw it last, there was a big contrast in the colors, but it has evened out a lot more now.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, the fire is just way too...
It's very low.
It's very low.
Not a
yeah.
very practical
It may be low,
bright.
but
But you've got an adjustable setting.
but they've got an adjustable
that for
setting.
me makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. the thing I like about this braai leading into the walkway is that they're connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The braai actually has a pad where you can stand and work.
And it's a link back to the house as well. I quite like that. Okay, let's look at Green Team's braai effort.
Remember, this was the team that used the microfibers in both that slab and the mortar work.
Yeah.
So wherever there's heat involved.
The overall look is quite neat, but it's just a very impractical braai. You've got no adjustment. You'll burn your meat every time you braai on this.
It's a very neat job.
Yes, absolutely.
And you can see that they have built it square, even though it's not square on the base. Where this wall is skew off the base, so is that wall.
Yeah.
So they have paid attention to the dimensions.
Yeah.
Okay, let's have a look at the orange wall.
See cracking around the edge,
Yeah.
uneven texture,
Yes.
variable.
I don't have much to say. It's not good.
I wouldn't like that to be shown below the corners.
Not a good effort. So this is Blue Team's plaster effort. I think last time I checked it with the straight edge and it was pretty good.
They have achieved
pretty good
tremendous
right through.
flatness.
Yeah.
I'd indicated that they had used the sponge
Yeah.
on this one. So they purposefully went for the rougher texture.
the rougher texture.
But in terms of flatness, I think they've done very well. Seeing some plastic shrinkage cracking. But I don't think that would actually show through
not gonna have an
paintwork. If one was going to go for the slightly rougher texture.
Yeah, if you put a good plaster primer on here and a ripple paint or even a textured paint, it will create a very nice finish.
There's very little dusting on the surface.
Okay, let's have a look at what the grey team has done with their plaster. The first impression is just not a
It's
good
not,
one.
it's not good. I wouldn't call this plaster. I would call it a disaster. I don't like it. It's not acceptable. It would never go in the marketplace. They've tried to make it a little bit more interesting with the red oxide. Total failure. No.
Yeah, this is very dusty.
Yeah, if you look at that, the ceiling guys can't do their work because they still have to finish the plastering to the other side. Now you're going to have two sets of plasters on one wall. No.
So this would have to either be removed or skimmed with a lot of skimming material.
Well, you wouldn't be able to skim it because it's got the oxide on. Nothing's going to bind on this wall now.
And yeah, no, you're right. And that's what's powdering off.
Yeah.
It's just a weak application,
Yeah.
a weak surface. Even paint wouldn't bond to that if you
Chip it off and start again.
Yeah.
Okay, Green Team's plaster effort. This is the wall that I was impressed with in our first inspection. I thought this was very good plaster.
Let's have a look at that flatness. Sure.
It's straight on. This is a really, really good plaster wall. I think anybody would accept this in
Looks
any
very
market, in
sweet.
the marketplace. If it's upmarket housing or even low-cost housing.
Yeah.
In the blueness that comes through. But this is very good plaster. This could almost go through for a two-coat plaster. Almost look vinyl like, so smooth.
You're right.
The electrical contractor can come in and do his work. The painters can do their work. Plug covers would fit on nicely. The wall was prepared properly for the other trades to carry on. That's what I like about this wall. I actually can't fault it in any way or form whatsoever. Very, very good plaster.
Good.
To see how you get even more strength beyond the bag, go to ppc.co.za, where you'll find info on the teams, the judges, building information, and much more.